From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey, everybody. I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have my good friend Marcus Burnette with me to talk about his project for the community, WP World. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency that can help protect your WordPress website today. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and see what we can do to help you protect your business investment. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I'm honored to be joined by my good friend, Mr. Marcus Burnette at WP World. How are you today, Marcus?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, such a pleasure. Been meaning to bug you for a while and get you on here about this really unique project you started called WP World. And where was this, like a weekend project, or where did this come from?
Yes and no is the answer to that. So I originally started, I guess this project, but it wasn't this project when I started it. It was something I put together, I want to say last summer, so mid 2022. I got an itch to kind of see if I could figure out a little bit more on how to use the Google Maps API. And so kind of mulling my brain for what I could possibly put together that that would allow me to tinker with the Google Maps API a bit. And so I just, I'm a WordPress guy. I threw up a WordPress site and said, you know what, I'll have a custom post type that's, I don't know, person or something, and then I'll give it some fields for coordinates, and then I'll work out the API portion of putting those people on a map. So I played around with it a little bit, just really trying to figure out what I can and can't do. How do you change the markers to look different on a Google map? What are the different styles that you can make, so you can make it look like different kinds of maps and stuff. And then I shelved it. That was probably the weekend project right there, was let me just take a weekend and see what I can do with Google Maps API. And then I shelved it, and sometimes I get lazy and I just leave a site sitting somewhere and like, I'll play with that later. Or, hey, if I want to come back to that because I need a piece of that for some project I'm working on, then I want to be able to go back and grab some of the code for that or whatever. So left it. And then, so earlier this year, so let me track back a little bit further. The reason I ultimately ended up deciding to continue on with those beginnings, the Google Maps piece, and turn it into something real instead of just a goofy thing to play around with, was we went through a couple of years here in Florida with some hurricanes that came through, and there are a lot of WordPress friends that I have here in Florida all across the state. And we were spending some time figuring out who's here, who's in the path of the hurricanes that are coming through, how can I make sure that we check up on each other and stuff like that. And so what I ended up doing was taking that weekend project of playing with the API, with the Google Maps API, and saying, well, why don't I map out, and this at this time was just for myself, why don't I map out where my WordPress friends are here in kind of central Florida and extended Florida area, and then I can toss all those pins on a map, because I did this little weekend project where I mapped people. So let me do that, and that way the next time a hurricane rolls through, I'll know who's in the path of the hurricane. I can see out here my friends in Tampa or in Miami, and wherever the hurricane's coming through, I can go back and check in on them. And so I started doing that, and I put a handful of people in the site. At that point, I cleaned it up to call it pressers because I wanted this to be, like my map of WordPress friends. And I thought I'm spending a lot of time putting people in myself. If I clean this up a tiny bit, I think I can just open it up and let people add themselves to the map. Um, so I did that. I cleaned it up a little bit earlier this year. I made it, I gave it a domain, the wp.world, and then I shared it with some folks just sort of, behind the scenes. I didn't make it a big public thing. I just said, hey, here's the thing that I'm working on. Would you add yourself to the map or whatever? And that way we can kind of keep track of each other. And that was really where the piece where, so right now, if you go to the WP world and you add yourself on your, profile page, you can see the folks that are around you. And that was kind of the beginnings of that was, hey, this map isn't just for me. I really want this map to be for anybody who signs up to see who's, around them in their general vicinity. And so I built that piece, and adding that piece, I think, triggered something in my mind to say, well, why don't I just make this public, share it on Twitter, share it on LinkedIn, and let everyone sign up. And that way everyone can kind of see who's in their general area. And so that was kind of how the WP world got started. It was sort of a weekend project last year, and then earlier this year I kind of cleaned it up and turned it into a way for folks to see who's in their area.
Isn't that always the way how these projects start? We find a need that we've got, in your case, learning the Google API. And I always say the best way to learn something is do a project that you're not under time constraint, and then we morph it into something else, right? Isn't that like so typical? And I've done that with custom fields, I've done that with pods over the years, I've done that with a multitude of things where you just find that need you have internally, and then it blows up, and before you know it, you're down a 100-hour rabbit hole.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that at that time it was really just I don't get a lot of chances in the position that I'm in now, the role that I'm in, to do
Yeah.
a lot of design and development work. And so it was really just kind of a weekend itch to get back in and code something. And I really, I guess, subconsciously didn't even think about it consciously beforehand that there's really a nice overlap between Google Maps, mapping folks on a map, and the community work that I do. And so
Yep.
I didn't even really think about it at the time. I really just wanted to play with some code. But as those things kind of merged towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, it sort of became like a merging of the development curious side of me and the community side that
Mhm.
I'm so heavily invested in the community side of things with WordPress that um it just makes sense to have something like that.
Yeah. And besides the Maps API, can we talk about what you're running under the hood? Like, are you running any custom code for this project, or is it all an assortment of plugins and APIs?
Yeah, it's actually a mash of kind of a lot of things. One of so at its core, it's WordPress with Elementor. Those are the main pieces, and then ACF for a lot of the custom field stuff. And then there's a lot of custom code that's generating short codes for where I want to place things, and also connecting to APIs. There's a word. Well, I just renamed it from a WordCamp section to an event section, but that's where all the WordCamps are. And I have a lot of stuff that's pulling in content from WordCamp Central for some of the WordCamp info, and then from each of the WordCamps themselves from their sites to pull in speaker info and organizer info and that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of API stuff there. One of the benefits that I've had in being able to kind of build this up fairly quickly over the course of this year is really the boom of AI stuff. Since the beginning of this year, obviously AI goes back further, but really the popularity and the accessibility of it to the general public starting at the beginning of this year. A lot of the custom code pieces were things I could have written, but I wrote in 1/10 of the amount of time, leveraging ChatGPT mostly. to say, here's what I have. And it's trained on all sorts of stuff. It's trained on WordPress and Google Maps API for sure. So having those two things kind of in my back pocket, um, being able to have ChatGPT generate like, here's the content, here's the post type that I have and the fields that I have, and I want these to be mapped on a Google map with a custom marker. Go and let it write the code for me. And again, it's code I could have written. I reviewed every bit of code that came out of that, because you have to with these AI softwares at the moment. And so, every line's been combed over to make sure it's doing what I need it to do. And I've tweaked things along the way. But really, things that would have taken me, 3-4 hours to code, I did in, half an hour with the help of AI coding assistant.
Yeah, and here's where, and I know you're big into AI, and
Hmm.
here's where AI isn't costing somebody work, is you still need somebody to manage the AI and review what AI is doing. So, not to turn this into an AI conversation, but I think we need to get off this that AI is going to cost jobs. It's just going to shift the way we do our business, and that's the more important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is a side project of mine, and that's one of the things that I actually appreciate most about GoDaddy is their encouragement of you having, side projects and your own entrepreneurial efforts, and wanting to, run small businesses, because that's what we're focused on serving is
Mhm.
folks that are running small businesses, in my case specifically in the WordPress space.
Yeah.
But this isn't a GoDaddy project. This is my project, so I have limited time, nights and weekends, to work on this. And having something like Chat GPT to help, you know write some of that stuff a lot faster than I would have written it, allows me to get further faster. And I wouldn't have been able to hire someone else. It would have been my time that was being used to write all that code. So I didn't take a job away from anyone. I just made my job easier, as the solo person running the WP World site. I just made it so that I could write some of this stuff faster.
And that's nice on weekends around running a family too. So,
Yeah, there's always the balance there. I can't
you
just I can't just disappear once work time is over. I can't just disappear to do my own projects. There's the balance of, family life and stuff too. So
yeah, and I've noticed you've gone down the sponsorship route with this project, which is really good. And it seems you've got an amazing abundance group of sponsors that have jumped in and said, "Hey, we want to support you, Marcus." That's like awesome.
yeah, definitely. And I super appreciate all of the sponsors that have stepped up to help make the site happen. You know, and again, that's besides just the time, there's, the resources that go into having a website like this, and, having to up those resources as traffic increases and stuff. And so I appreciate all the sponsors that have stepped up and said, "Hey, we really support this project. We think it's great." And um, funny enough, it's actually WordCamp US just happened in National Harbor, and it was sort of the first camp where we've gotten together since I've built this project. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of both sponsors and attendees come up and say, "Hey, are you the guy that built the WP World? Really like that site. Really love being able to connect with folks." And I love hearing that. I mean, that's the main goal here, is for, everyday WordPress folks to be able to jump in, see who's around them, connect with people around them, be able to see whether their areas, maybe populated enough to support a meetup, and be able to start meetup groups back up, or
Mhm.
or even for organizers of WordCamps to jump in and say, here's the folks in our area. We can definitely pull off having a WordCamp here. And that's ultimately what I want the site to be, is just a resource for WordPress folks and WordCamp organizers and meetup organizers, just to be able to hop in there and get all the information they need to collaborate with each other.
That is really, really, really key. And I think it's going to become a resource because I know, like, for example, in Toronto, who's in the Toronto area, like who the players are in the Toronto area. But then I start looking at like one person I talked to, and I'll call him out quite a bit, is James Giroux. And I didn't realize James
Hmm.
was in the Kingston area, which isn't that far from me. And, you
Yep.
know, I know kind of who's in the upstate New York area a little bit because Michelle Frichette's in upstate New York. Michelle's in Rochester. So, but then I kind of start looking, and then there's more people in that area that even I don't know, but I know who they are, right? So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, James was actually one of the ones that came up to me at WordCamp US and was talking about the site. And turns out he hopped on the site and he saw another person, another WordPresser in the Kingston area, and found out that their kids actually go to school together. And so they were able to kind of start a conversation with each other, connect with each other over the fact that their kids are even in school together. They didn't even know each other were in the same city working in the WordPress space.
Yeah. So what do you want to add to the site, or are you done? I gotta ask.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll ever be done. That's the nature of sites in general. But I've continued to sort of work through in phases the things that I want the site to be. First and foremost, I want the site to be a way for WordPress folks to connect with each other. So that's where it started with pressers, as I call them in the site, to be able to sign themselves up for free. You just fill out a form. Thanks to shout out to Mark Westgard at WS Form for generously donating WS Form for a number of different forms across the site. But fill out the form and it creates the WordPress presser profile for you, and you can see who's around you and share a bit about yourself so people can connect with you on LinkedIn and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and just kind of foster that collaboration with each other. And then from there, I wanted it to be a resource for WordCamp and meetup organizers. So I've built out an events section where I've listed all of the WordCamps from last year and this year, and any of the ones that are already slated for 2024. And I'm just continuing to try and find more things that I can add to those pages to provide resources for both organizers and attendees of the WordCamp. Summaries, there's weather on there. So if you're trying to figure out what you need to pack for a WordCamp, there's, a little weather widget for that area for those days and stuff. And then, so the more recent one is a business directory that I added, and I'm hoping that I can continue to grow the business directory. And that's really anybody who considers themselves a business in the WordPress space, whether that's an agency or a plugin or theme developer. I have a couple of nonprofit businesses up there as well. I just want to build that out. And what I'm hoping there is that, one, businesses are able to get a little bit of visibility for anybody who's looking for WordPress business to work with, but also to try and create some opportunities for people to find work. I know that the last couple of years have been kind of up and down with people being laid off and needing to find work and all of that. And so I'm hoping to really find a way to connect businesses with WordPress folks that are looking for employment, to try and see if I can help people find jobs working in the WordPress space. And so, and I'm trying to build up that business directory. There are a couple dozen businesses already in the directory, but the more that are in there, the more valuable the site will be for everyone. So continuing on there. And then I've got a long list of other things that are sort of in the back of my mind as things that I might want to add, sort of trying to figure out which pieces to add and which pieces to move on from.
Yeah.
That's
What I like about this project so much, first of all, I agree with you. Shout out to Mark. The only thing he's got to figure out is how we can work a WS Forms plugin to generate pizza to end up in Toronto. That's another story. I can't let that one go, but that's, he'll figure it out. He's working on it. But he truly, it's probably the easiest Forms plugin to use on the web. It's the one I use, and disclaimer: Mark and I are good friends, and so are you. So, like, we all get it, right? So, and what I like about this project more than anything is it's one of these projects that, we've had trials in our community over the years, and projects like this bring our community together. They don't pull it apart. And I think that's really important. And it's more important with all these core WordCamps. So we're talking Asia, US, and Europe. And
Mm-hmm.
more and more people are tending to go across the Atlantic for WordCamps, and or coming here for WordCamps. I mean, I think wasn't Bob Dunn there from Porto, and wasn't Andrew Palmer there, and several other people from Europe that I know over here.
Yep.
So just to name a couple. And I think what we're starting to see is, because of things like air travel, and because of things like Zoom calls, and because of things like you and I doing a podcast remotely, we're starting to see our community become closer. And this website just kind of helps that initiative a little bit.
Yeah, and that's again, that's the main goal. And some of the things that I've kind of gone back and forth. You were asking about what I wanted to add.
Yes.
I've had individuals come up, they're not part of a business, they don't run their own business. They've asked, how can I support the site? And I've tried to figure out how do I find a way for just the individual who wants to help support the site be able to support the site. But I really want all of those WordPress, the presser stuff to just always remain free. And that's why I appreciate the sponsors and the businesses that sign up, because it allows me to keep that free for the community to be able to hop up there and find out who's in their area. Or I've had folks tell me that, oh, I was visiting some family in another state here in the US, and I was able to hop on the WP World, and there's a proximity search there. They could type in the city that they're visiting, and they could see the WordPress folks that are within 50 miles of that city, or however, you can change the distance. And be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods, in a couple of weeks. You want to get together and have lunch or grab a coffee or whatever, and be able to foster those in-person connections too.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's become so easy for us to record these podcasts remotely, or have Zoom calls, or chat with each other online. But those in-person connections are so important, and so being able to kind of foster that by letting people see, maybe I'm not in my hometown, but I'm going to be in somebody else's hometown, and maybe I can reach out and see if they'd want to get together and grab a bite to eat or something. And I love that opportunity is there and much more easily available. Usually people just reach out on social and say, hey, I'm going to be in whatever city, is anybody around, and hope for the best. You don't know the way that the timeline algorithms are set. That was one of my notices that I saw at WordCamp US, is it was constant, hey, I'm going out to wherever in an hour, anybody want to join me? And I'd see it 6 hours later because of the way that the Twitter algorithm works. And I'm like, well,
Works. Yeah.
yeah, there goes that opportunity. I would have gone to dinner with them if I'd have known that, would have known that in time. So, throwing that out there to the social networks and hoping for the best isn't always the greatest way to get folks. So
Yeah.
being able to provide a way for people to see, who's going to be around.
So I have to ask you a question. Have you found a way to handle the digital nomads we have in the community on WP World?
Yeah, not well yet. My ultimate goal, and it's going to take a little bit of logistics backpedaling, I think, because of the way I've set some of this stuff up, is to allow WordPress folks to kind of log in and update their own information. Right now there's another form on the presser profiles where people can request an update, and then I'll review those and manually make the updates. And at scale, that's not going to work.
No.
Right
No.
now it's still manageable. But I'd really love, and that it really changes it a little bit from a directory site to another social media site, essentially. And so, I have to figure out what that entails, and sort of the repercussions of that before I fully step into that space. But I'd like for people to be able to log in and kind of update their own accounts. Then folks like was it Alex Standiford, who's
He's
traveling
one.
all the time, can log in and update his location wherever he happens to be. So
Guys
yeah,
like
there's definitely some things to think through there, and the digital nomad piece is one of them.
Yeah. Guys like him, guys like Cameron Jones a little bit. Cameron's been kind of traveling all over, even though he's from Australia. We know Cameron quite well if you've watched This Week in WordPress. Another guy that comes to mind is Adam McLaughlin. He's a fellow Canadian from like an hour and a half down the road from me. We're actually grabbing lunch, I think, at the end of the month. I can't wait. He's from Woodstock, Ontario, and he's a digital nomad with his family, and he homeschools his kids. So he's like all over the place. He's been in Europe. He's been all over. So that's what I was kind of wondering is how guys like that will, and ladies, there's a few lady digital nomads there too. So
that's one. And then who was it? It was Taco from Yoast at back in Athens.
Yes.
He had talked to me about how it might be cool if like when the flagship WordCamps are happening, or really any of them, but mostly for the big ones, US, Asia, and Europe, if for like those dates, anybody who's marked themselves as attending those camps, the pins would kind of congregate around the campsite, and you could see, you know, just how many people from the community are gathering all in one spot for that week. And I thought that was a cool idea too. So that may be something that I work into it at some point. So yeah, there's definitely some moving pins, and I gotta figure out how to get the moving pins moving.
Yeah, it's back to the Google API work, because the big thing with the Maps API is Google's changed that a lot in the last couple of years and changed how it functions a little bit. So there's some work to be done there, no question. Marcus, thanks for doing this. Like, this is like an incredible endeavor for the community, and it's much appreciated. If somebody wants to talk to you about WP World, how's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can. I'm probably most easily found on Twitter /X, just at Marcus D. Burnette, or there's some contact info on the WP World too. So just go into the WP.world. We'll get you there as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, Marcus. Have yourself a wonderful day in Central Florida, actually, not South Florida, right?
Yep. Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate you having me on.
No, always a pleasure. Talk soon.
All right.
This show is brought to you by StunningDigitalMarketing.com, your Toronto leader in digital marketing services. Not only do we protect your WordPress website, we can help you with your site, provide social media management for your business, or even do one-on-one consulting. To find out more, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. A very special thank you to Marcus for joining us on this edition of the SDM Show. Hey everybody, Rob here again. Thanks for listening to the SDM Show. It's such a pleasure to have you every week. If you want more on our agency website, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. We are your WordPress security experts. We'd be glad to help you out. If you want to learn more about me, Rob Cairns, go to meetrobcairns.online. From there, you can find links to everything I do on the web, as well as book time with me. So feel free. If you want to make comments about this podcast or know a guest possibly suitable for the podcast, please email us at podcast@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, or conversely, you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and tweet at me at Rob Cairns. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much, and I love you. Please join us next week for another interesting podcast, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.